Should we just start? Okay, so I think this afternoon we're going to do kind of a variety of things. Oh, first, I just want to show a few more slides about multi-word expressions, and then I have a slide that shows a morphologically complex predicate in Arapaho with instructions on, well, at least how I've decided for Arapaho to turn that single word sentence into a wholly UMR graph with multiple participants and all that. And then I think
we can continue more annotation tool, Q&A, or anything you run into personally. I think this is a good time to bring it up than waiting later and email me or like submit GitHub issue for us to solve. So you are also welcome to bring your device in the front if you want to show something to all of us. I think, yes, basically, like, what do you call that, like casual, and we want to hear as many comments and feedback as possible so we can improve this tool. Well, it's still fresh, right? We don't want the bug accumulated over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we're probably all dealing with similar issues, a whole variety of different issues as people are practicing with different languages, and we can all maybe figure out some strategies together. And the Betterment also had another wonderful idea today, which,
me, by the way.
oh wait, I threw my little away. Come back.
That's the other.
Why is it?
It was Google. Maybe you could. Oh no! Look, this is second one. If you goes to yes and now up, and the second should be on as option.
It got moved into its own window for some reason. I'm not sure why it did that, but in any case, okay. So what we just did, we've added a folder to the shared drive for photos and anything that people are taking. If we want to share them all with each other, anything anybody wants to share, go ahead and put it in there. So.
And the folder is open, am I right? For anyone, not only to watch, but we can also add.
Yeah, I think anybody can add stuff into the folder. So, yeah. Okay, back to the slides. Okay, so Bert started out talking about a variety of multi-word expressions, so I think we can just kind of build on that a little bit. Actually, we'll talk about this one before I talk about the Arapaho. And I'm going to skip some of these. This is an old slideshow. Okay, but I'm just going to throw out there, so there's just a whole range of different kinds of multi-word expressions out there. Light verb constructions, remember in UMR, we don't bother annotating the actual light verb. We just use the nominal, whatever it is, or sometimes it's not even a noun, but the heavy part, we just use that as the predicate. Fixed multi-word expressions like by and large and all right, we just hyphenate them, they go in a single node. Verb particle constructions, they come up in a lot of different languages, and usually people are treating this as a single predicate and hyphenating it. There are probably arguments for some people if you want to split it up and handle the particles separately, probably do that, but most people are combining them. Non-consecutive constructions, we looked at the XOR, the wire the other day. There's different versions of those, usually handled with a rule set because it's easier to deal with. And then semi-fixed multi-word expressions, which are ones that are maybe partly idiomatic, and also some of the tokens are fixed and other tokens are modifiable. So you can get ones, hot little hands on something, you can modify hands. You don't, well, I guess you usually say hot little hands. But anyway, the point is something like hot little. So if you handle this as a rule set, you might have get hands on as the rule set, and then you would have an argument for this slot where you can put different modifiers in. Then idioms, we have a special way of handling idioms with rule sets. Proverbs we've already looked at, and the two-part allegorical sayings we've already looked This is just an example of a hyphenated simple multi-word expression. Here's a parallel example from English and Chinese of a verb particle construction. So you can just see it's very nice. The graphs are basically the same graph. It's very nice when that happens. That's kind of what we want with UMR. But yeah, they're both treated as a single predicate in both languages. Light verb constructions, just to reiterate, break is the main predicate. There, we did not include make in the graph. And if anybody wants me to slow down on these, I know I'm going kind of fast. Oh, there's more. I forgot this was a multi-part slide. Same thing in Spanish. I think this one was from you.
Oh, yes.
And then I think we have one from Czech in here too. Yes. Okay, so this is an interesting one because this part is actually kind of idiomatic on its own. This is the light verb. So we got rid of the light verb, but we made a complex rule set for this as a multi-word expression. These are parallel examples of the Xer and the Wire. It's kind of cool that it's in English and Chinese. And I added these slides to the drive, so if anyone wants to spend more time like looking at these graphs. Okay, so here, this slide is an example of how we would do a rule set for something that is a full-on idiom, like jump on the bandwagon. So he jumped on the Bitcoin bandwagon. You can modify the bandwagon syntactically with something that tells you more about what the fad is. So jump on the bandwagon, of course, means you're participating in the fad. So the rule set has, sorry, there are like more. Okay, there we go. Yeah, the rule set has two numbered arguments. So you've got the participant in the fad, and then you've got the fad. And then inside the lexical file, we have this section where it lays out the different tokens. Each token is assigned a slot, and there's various information assigned to each slot. There's part of speech. There's dependency information about what the syntactic head of that element is in the construction. And then there's also a mapping from the literal meaning to the figurative meaning. And the way you read this, so this was actually originated during AMR by Tim O'Gorman. Jump 03 is the actual literal jump rule set in English Puppet. So we've given it a variable of A. This A is the same as this slot ID. So you know that this predicate joining in, and this is also a real rule set, the join in rule set. So that's also A. So those two correspond to each other. N-arg means the numbered arg from this rule set. So N-arg 0, the fad participant, is the jumper in the literal meaning. It's also the person joining in on the fad, on the figurative meaning. And it just has an N as the variable because it's not one of these slots. Okay, so in the literal meaning, you're jumping onto the bandwagon. So that's D. In the figurative meaning, you've got this participant is joining in on, okay, so join in, I think is, join a group. So arg0 is the joiner, arg1 is the group. So the people who participate in a fad. And then the kind of fad is this argument, the fad up there. So that's like this, like the Bitcoin fad. So that fad is the Bitcoin fad. Does that make sense? It's they're kind of weird to read, but it's really nice to have this in the rule set. And this is what I'm working on developing for morphologically complex predicates too. We've never we've never done something like this inside of rule set files before for morphological complexity. This kind of stuff only exists for multi-word expressions, for a very small number of idioms, actually. But it's so nice to have deeper information. And I think if you had this kind of mapping for morphologically complex predicates too, you could actually extract this information and put it into graphs, extract other arguments that are maybe like incorporated nouns. But anyway, that is what that looks like. Oh, okay, I think Bert showed those. Oh yeah, okay, and then, so here's an example of what you might do if you encountered a new multi-word expression. Take to the cleaners we don't have a rule set for in English. Back before we had UMR, if you encountered something like this, you would have to go build a rule set for it because we didn't have participant roles yet. All we had were numbered args for those things. So you would actually have to stop annotation, you'd have to go create this whole thing. It was always like a bottleneck for annotation. So what you can do now, you can say, okay, take to the cleaners, it probably means, you're gonna like swindle somebody. And you can just use the participant roles. And you can kind of do this as you're experimenting with building the role set and you don't know what it wants to look like yet. Yeah, so we've just got the actor, person who is doing the swindling, we've got the effectee for the person who's being swindled, and we've got a theme for the money that is being stolen. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at Okay, so here, I think this is really interesting. We have a whole variety of expressions here, 3 from English and 1 from Arapaho, that they all mean the same thing. There is a slight aspectual difference between ailed and the rest of them, because that's just stated, it just is. But basically, all of these things mean that you get sick. And there are wildly different numbers of tokens used to express this same idea in all these different constructions. So basically, you've got the same argument. You've got the person who gets sick, and then you've got something predicating. So here you have an intransitive. Well, I guess this is also kind of intransitive. They're all kind of intransitive. But yeah, just 2 tokens there, 3 tokens there, 5 there. The literal interpretation of the Arapaho. So this is really cool because this is an idiom in Arapaho. It is not a multi-word expression because it is one word. Everybody always talks about idioms being multi-word expressions, and they are not always. But it means a ghost shot him with an arrow, or alternately, he was shot with a ghost arrow. But it really just means he got sick. You're not really indicating that there was someone who got him sick when you use this. So basically, you can end up with rule sets that are identical for all of these things. And with UMR, we want our graphs to look similar. No matter how many tokens were actually used, the meaning, we want the graph to reflect the meaning. We want to have the same number of arguments. So like this, I mean, you've got multiple participants here. You've got a ghost, you've got a victim, you've got an arrow, and you've got, even though it's not included in the literal, you've got an illness that you also know is part of the brain. Okay, so now I'm going to go to this Arapaho example. So this is a single word. You can see at the very top. And I'm still not good. I never hear Arapaho spoken, so I'm very bad at pronouncing it. But it's something like Nihtebe. So I cut off his head with a knife. So the nih is just a past tense prefix. And all Arapaho verbs are structured like this. There are so many slots that you can use for adverbial modifiers. There are just many many, many slots that are possible. But there's really just 3 that are filled in here. So you always have an aspectual or tense prefix, and then you have a pronominal index at the end. You can have an additional reference to both of those entities in the sentence as separate words if you want to, but they're not required. But verbs you do have to have the pronominal index all the time. So that means that you have a first person singular acting on a third person singular. So when we first started with UMR, there was this instruction in the guidelines that if you were doing stage 0 annotation, you would just put the whole inflected verb in as one piece. And I was saying this yesterday, but that left me, like the first graph I tried to make, it was just it was one node because the whole sentence was one word. And I hadn't been allowed to do anything with it. It was just inflected and it was a node. I was like, this is nothing. So it's been really difficult because even though in Arapaho you can morphologically analyze this chunk here, this is the verb stem. So it's got 3 parts, 3 morphs. You can't actually separate those out and have individual morphemes that speakers would use individually. But the first part, temp, means to break and remove with something stick-like. The second part is the head, and the third part is by blade. So how do you make a graph out of that? Basically for Arapaho, I am using what the Arapaho dictionary, which of course was written by Andy, who I'm working with, their decisions about what a verb stem is, I am respecting their decisions for the verb stem, and I'm using that as the predicate label, even if it's morphologically complex. But we still want to have nodes in the graph for all of the participants. So instead of like trying to pull out just S and having S in a node down here for instrument, like that would be weird. And it wouldn't look right to an Arapaho speaker. We're actually just putting in like why did that happen? Sorry, my computer kept freezing yesterday afternoon and I'm really worried that it's gonna die. Okay, so rather than like pulling just that S down and having that be in a node here, which would be weird, we're just doing this abstract concept thing, which is one of the concepts from the named entity hierarchy. So we're just including that in there as like a stub. And that's basically true for all of these. So the actor, the first person singular, we get that from there. We've cut off the pronominal suffix. So you'll notice it's not up here anymore in the pamphlet. But we've got a stub for that, and we're handling that as a full pronoun. Same with the source, so the person whose head has been cut off. And then the theme is the head itself, so that's the thing that's been removed, and then the instrument. Does that look reasonable? I mean, every language is going to have to figure out how to do this in a way that makes sense for the way their language is structured.
So if you're looking at this parallel data in UMR, how much standardization do you think there actually is?
So the hope is that if we have a graph for this English translation, and we have a graph for this Arapaho sentence,
They should be structured similarly.
the graph should have a similar structure. And what I'm finding with English is that we also have a lot of verbs in English that have either, I mean, there's not as much noun incorporation in the way that you might think of with like German, although we have some with like hand paint, that kind of verb. But there are so many verbs like sweep, no, not sweep, that's one doesn't, like mop. Or pocket, like I pocketed the money. I mean, the way the prop bankroll sets were created, like the pocket, you never hear anybody say, I pocketed the money in my pocket. Like you wouldn't say that. But you're still saying pocket. There's a shadow argument there that is the verb. But there's not a numbered argument for it because it doesn't ever show up as a syntactic argument. But it's lost in the English representation too. So it's useful in English to put these stub nodes in too. If you're doing co-reference annotation, you might have another reference to your pocket at some point, and you want to be able to create a reference between them. So ideally, we want, oh, stop it. Why is it doing this? Okay. Ideally, we want the graphs to be structured similarly, but we're still kind of trying to narrow in on how to make that happen for all languages.
I'm sorry, this may be a diversion from what you're going to talk about, but if we're looking at UMRs, let's say parallel UMRs, do you think that divergences in those graphs are more indicative of semantic differences than divergences in parallel AMR graphs?
I mean, the hope would be
Yes.
yes. Are we there yet with the current state of guidelines? I'm not sure.
Okay. So you think that when there's kind of a let's say final. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's such a
I know. I hope that the next iteration of the guidelines that I've been working on for like 2 years now will create a more consistent input and output.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks.
You know what? I actually had a whole bunch of different parts of this slide that described all the stuff I just said. Anyway, this slideshow is in there. There's some more stuff in there if anybody's interested in looking at it. But that was all I really wanted to just get up and share right now. I know there are other people in this room who are working on more polysynthetic and agglutinating languages. So I guess the next thing, we could spend some time just hands-on with the tool again.
Do we want them to like brainstorm?
For like multi-word expressions?
Yeah.
Well, that was another idea. If anybody was interested in brainstorming, some multi-word expressions, maybe from a language that you work with or in English, and we could like practice figuring out how to divide up those concepts between like arguments and predicates and how to make a graph out of it. But I don't know, we could like take 5 minutes and think about if anybody has multi-word expressions that they are interested. Otherwise, we can just work on working with the tool again. Well, let's take 5 minutes and then